one of the biggies for me is the thought process and the conversation you're going to have with your child, pre and post-game conversations, to really think about what are we going to talk to our kid about, and to make sure that we set them up for success and also help them in case they fail. So we're going to start off with preparing your child to play and to how to compete. So the way that I would do that is you want to talk about that not just on the game day, but particularly as you're going forward. And let's talk about the game day, because that's probably going to be the one that's on the top of our mind. We've already had the conversation. We've already had some practice. We've gone through some skills and drills. We've had the chance to really say, okay, guess what, son? Today is your time. Do you get to play? Or, honey, it's your chance, sweetheart. Let's go out there and play some game today. So now they're going to show up, and they've got to be there, and we know we're going to be there early. Remember, game time might be 4 o'clock, but you got to be there early. Some coaches are going to want you there at 3:30. Some are going to want you earlier. Do your best to be there early and have them ready to go. So the conversation that I usually have with my son, as an example, as we're driving to the game, is he'll be sitting there and we're driving along, and I don't want to drill him with too many things, because I think if I give them too much to think about, he can overthink the thought process and over too much when he gets to the game site. Now he's confused. So I try to keep it very simple. I try to give them only 3 conversational points to think about, or what we call teaching points. Number 1 is, hey, buddy, what's your goal today? So I'm asking questions rather than telling him specific. What's his goal? And he might say, I want to score this. Or I said, hey, that's great to have a goal. Remember, having a goal that involves scoring is something you may not be able to control, because sometimes the ball goes in, or sometimes you hit the ball, sometimes it doesn't necessarily work. But I said, that's good. He's thinking about these things. And then I'll say, okay, now that you've got your basic goal, what about the team? What does Coach talk to you about the team? Well, Coach mentioned that the team we're playing is fast, so we've got to make sure this. Because I want to try to reinforce the coach's mindset. So I had that conversation with him to really ask him the question, what is the coach thinking about that? And then, what does the coach tell you specifically your goal is today? So I know your personal goal, you want to put the ball in the hoop, or you want to score some goals, you want to get some hits. I love that, buddy. Let's go do that. And we talked a little bit about the overall picture in terms of that, but what specifically now is the coach's goal for you? Has he told you anything? And if he doesn't know that, well, then that's a thought process. Here, let me help you out. For me, Mason, I think what's really important is that you make sure that you're such a great defender. We want to make sure that every time your player gets the ball, you stay in front of them, between them and the basket the whole time. If you can do that for me today, that's going to be a win. Why it's so important to give them those type of little goals as you go forward is because you can refer to those later, no matter what the final score is, to help them to feel successful during the game. And again, that comes back to understanding what the goal is overall. The goal is not just to win the game today, but how you play. And I know that sounds crazy. It's not whether you win or lose or how you play the game, but there is an important piece of that when you're dealing with kids. To me, I think if I keep it simple within those goals and that understanding of how to compete and play, I think I can refer back to that. And I can even sometimes come back to that and say, hey, what did you think? And get some dialogue going from there. So when you start on that drive as you're going to the game. Now, some kids don't want to talk about it. Some kids say, Dad, I got this, in which case you put the music on and you just roll. And that's sometimes the way it is, and sometimes it varies. I think it really is up to the child if they want to talk to you or not, and you're going to kind of have to believe in what they're doing and trust the process and understand it's okay if they fail. That's part of the process. Next up is keep it simple. Remember, less is more. So again, I'm only giving them 3 things. So as you go through the process, and if they say no, then no it is. Because you don't want to get in the emotional headspace of your child before they're going to go out and compete. You want them in a space where they're comfortable. There's going to be a little bit of excitement. They're going to feel that little bit inside. I sometimes ask my daughter, I say, how you feeling? She goes, oh, I'm kind of nervous. And I say, is it butterfly or is it worms? See, worms is not a you, it's a ucky one, right? Okay, then we can deal with that. Butterflies, that's good, honey. That means you're excited to play, and that's what we want, to build that excitement. Next up, if I ask, okay, are we ready to go? Anything you need from me? Are you ready? It's kind of like a head-to-toe check. Is my equipment ready? Good, okay. Have you gone potty? Because remember, once they run out there, they hopefully have gone to the bathroom first or run by as you go. Are their shoes tied? As simple as the fact that during the game, are their shoes tied? Because if they run out there and their shoes are untied at any given point or not double-tied or loose, what ends up happening is they have to stop the game to do that. Sometimes it becomes embarrassing, especially if your child is not great at tying their shoe and it takes them a while during the game. It just breaks down the experience. Now, I know it sounds nuts. I know I told you earlier about John Wooden talking about socks. Here I'm talking about shoelaces. But I really think that variable, those little things, can really help to make it a more positive experience for your son or daughter. Remind them always, the last thing I try to do as I send them out there is, what did your coach tell you? Remember, listen to your coach. Now, that means during the game, I can't coach them. And it's tough because I'm a coach, and sometimes I have to do this, but it's important that we realize it's their experience. So since it's their experience, I have to let them do that. I have to let them swing at the pitch that's above their head and sit there and go, ugh, but that's part of the process. So I remind them very carefully, make sure you're listening to your coach, because your coach is there to help them. And sometimes the coach says things and you go, oy, 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 but that's part of the process too. You know what? Life's not fair. They may not play all the equal time they're going to get, but that's how we set them up and allow the process to kind of go forward for them. As they go out to play, I usually say two things. Give them a hug. Let them know unconditionally I love you no matter what happens. Play hard and have fun. So if you told your child every single time they go out there to play hard, have fun, and leave it alone, you don't need to give them anything more. That's all you want, right? You want them to be happy. You want them to play hard. You want to have fun. That's all you can do. And you understand they're going to fail at some point. That's okay. That's part of the process again. But to me, play hard, have fun is a great way to send them on out. Now, once the game goes on, now we have to kind of go through this process of, I'm a fan of the game, I'm watching the game, and there's all different things that can happen during the game. You can be frustrated because your child's not playing the right position. You can be upset because they're not scoring goals or they're not doing certain things. But I'm going to guarantee you this, the moment you start to give information while the coach is trying to give information, that's going to confuse your child. And they're going to be conflicted as to, okay, do I listen to mom or listen to dad? So be very careful of the information you give out. We talked about it earlier again, and I would highly recommend this. Cheer for both teams. Cheer for great plays. If you cheer for great plays, your son or daughter is going to see, hey, dad liked that play. I want to do that, so I get some of that as well. So that's a very important piece of this. It doesn't mean you have to cheer when they hit the scoring goal against you and beat you, although sometimes it might be the best thing to do. But I would say as you go through this process, through the game, remember that everybody's watching you and they're hearing you. And my recommendation is that less is more when you're communicating to your child during the games. After the games, be careful of making too many immediate corrections or changes. You know what, son, I think you should have this, or why didn't you that? And coming down on them. Because what's going to happen is they just got done competing. Now, it could have been a heavy competitive game and they fought and they battled and they ran through all this stuff and they had to go through all this experience and then all of a sudden they're done. And now you come at them one more thing and it's done. They're going to burst into tears. It's going to be a negative experience. So I'll give you an example of someone that I saw that was about 5 or 6 years back. It was down in a group that I saw, and I was kind of amazed because the kid actually played very well. And so when the dad came over, and I thought his initial approach wasn't bad, he said, how did you think you played? And the kid said, I thought I played pretty good. But then the dad's next words threw me. I didn't think you played hard enough. I didn't think you tried your best. You need to be better. And I looked at the kid's face who went from excitement. They won the game, for God's sake. He played well. I think he scored some goals and he had fun, to all of a sudden this negative experience. And basically I could see he just took the life, the fun out of that game right there on the spot. So be careful. It's a fresh wound. So be careful right there on the spot of what you ask. For me, I would be very careful of the communication and the words and how I say it. Not just because other people are watching, but because you really want your child to be able to soak that experience in and kind of live with it a little bit. We also know that the kids are out there playing, particularly when they're younger, they have to process it on their own level. Like I said earlier, some kids, as soon as the game's over, they get to the snack bar, they forgot about the game. Now, later on, you might be able to have a conversation with them and bring up some certain plays, be specific with those. But right on the spot, I was really disappointed for that child when that dad brought that information up. It was kind of sad to see that. First thing I always ask would be, did they have fun? How many of you guys have been to a game and you watch the kids and then you're so focused on what's going on that you're forgetting to realize that they're playing a game? Or you're not even at the game, you're at work and you miss the game and you're frustrated. And then what's the first question we ask on the phone? Did you win? How many points did you score? You know, those questions, all that does is put the pressure on them to win and to score. And you know what? I like the fact they're competing, but I think if you choose, did you win or did you score or how many did you score as the first questions, you're setting yourself up and your son or daughter for failure. Because the reality is they're not going to score every game and they're not going to win every game. So you're judging their experience based on success or failure rather than effort. I always preach, tell parents, please, did you have fun? How did you play? How did you do? How did your team do? Start asking questions at that level and then, you know what, see where they go. Sometimes your kid like I said earlier, may want to talk about it. That's cool. If they don't want to talk about it, let them soak it in. If you go out there and you start digging and digging and digging, you might dig to a place you don't want to, and then guess what? They don't want to play the sport anymore. So my recommendation after the game, did you have fun out there? Great. Hey, it looked like you tried really hard. What did you think? And go that path. As you go down and maybe they've had a chance to cool down from the game and they're untying their shoes or changing out or you're in the car, I have a rule with my kids. And basically, I say very simple. How did you feel about the game, and do you want to talk about it? That's simple. How did you feel about the game? Do you want to talk about it? Their choice. If they said, I had fun, I don't want to talk about it, which my son usually doesn't want to talk about it, that's fine. Let's roll on. We put on whatever station, and we go get ice cream, whatever we're going to do. My daughter's different because she wants to talk all about it. She wants to talk about the social side. And did you see what we did? Remember that play? And that's great. And she's got a memory. And I remember I did this and I should have done that. What did you think? And it's great. And again, each child's different. My recommendation is find out what your child likes, kind of get the ritual and the program and the system, and find out. Because the harder we request that information and push, the further they're going to go away from the love of the game. And they're going to feel like that pressure. And remember, we talked about this earlier. The number one reason why kids quit playing sports is too much pressure. And that comes from one person, unfortunately. It's usually the parents. I would talk to them about what could have been done better. You know, once it's all smoke is cleared, and ask the question, what could we have done better as a team? Don't necessarily pick them out, but it's okay to say, what could we have done better? And when we talk about that, we talk about what do you think we could have done better as a team? Now, they might say, well, Sarah did this. I would be careful of allowing them to blame anybody else. Failure doesn't become fatal until you start to blame someone else, right? We know that. But what I would say is it's good to hear what they're thinking. It's good to understand their mindset and their thought process. Well, Sarah didn't kick me the ball, and I was upset, and she should have this. Okay, well, what do you think we can do about that? And let them work it through and become problem solvers for themselves. If you remember back, like I said earlier, when I was a kid, I got to go down the street and play ball with my friends. And we dealt with success and failures. We learned all these different ways to compete on our own. Well, our kids nowadays don't have that opportunity. It's not safe to let them go play down on their own. They don't have the same neighborhood opportunities as we had. So since they don't have that, they may not learn that exercise on their own. They may not learn to be able to do those things. So it's important for me that you have that conversation with them and then let them have the conversation as they move forward. And there's going to be some things they're going to tell you that you're going to be surprised about. And if you can say, okay, so what do you think we could do? Let them creatively problem solve with you. They'll find a solution. Sometimes, well, I'm not going to pass her the ball anymore. Well, that doesn't necessarily work either, and you can talk through it. But I think you understand where I'm going with this. For me, it's very important you ask the questions, what could they have done better as a team? And then she may say something, or he may say something, and then you can ask, that's interesting. Well, what do you think if you had done this, what do you think would have happened? And maybe guide them down the path to the answers you're looking for, if you want to continue that conversation. Remember, that's only if they decided to talk to you or not after the game's over. Lastly, I always love when you remind them at the end what they did well. So remember I told you a story earlier. We were talking about my son Mason where he pitched 3 innings, no hit ball in baseball. He got 2 doubles, which are 2 very good hits, but he struck out the last at-bat. And so we're going home from the game, and I was really good. That day, I think he ate 2 hamburgers after the game, and he drank soda and whatever it was. I let him have whatever. We're all done. We're getting in the car, and we're driving home, and it happened to be just the 2 of us. And I could tell he was sad. He was definitely, disappointed is the word. And, I looked at him, and I said, hey, remember, you were 2 for 3 today. That means you got 2 hits out of 3 at-bats. Remember I told you earlier, Willie Mays, 70% of the time he got out, my son batted basically 666, which is tremendous. Most pros would love to go 2 doubles. Okay? So I reminded him that you pitched, buddy. You pitched 3 innings. Nobody scored on you. You caught a ball. You had a great game. Just because of that one play, that one out, even though it was a big one, doesn't mean that you played bad or didn't live up to my expectations. Okay? So for me, I would end on that. Give them something positive. Because for me, if they can leave on something positive, it's going to make them want to come back and do it again. And to me, that's what it's about. We know that if they go out there and play sports and they're having fun, they're going to want to do it. They're going to have success. They're going to have failure. That's part of the process. So as you go through this process in the conversation, the pregame conversation and the postgame, Keep it simple. Remember that some kids like to talk about it more than others. And as you go through, end on something positive.